to please mute your microphones to not disturb the audience. So welcome to the EU Covenant of Mayors webinar series on the homegrown energy engagement actions. This is our last webinar, and we are happy to co-organize it with the colleagues from the ManagEnergy initiative. We will have very short presentations about the homegrown energy with some Slido to test your knowledge about energy communities. And then Christian Heger from the Hyperactive Energy Agency and Francisco Puente from ESCAN, both representing ManagEnergy, will present us what energy communities are and what are the business models that you could use. And then we will have a short Q&A. Now, unfortunately, I'm having some issues with Slido, so I will have to stop sharing my screen and share it again. But please connect to Slido. We only have 3 questions, so it's going to be very quick. So the first question that I would like to ask you is, what, in your opinion, is an energy community? You have 3 answers: a group of citizens who generate energy by cycling all day to power street lights, a local group with member-controlled governance that produce, share, and manage their own energy, or a local task force responsible for managing wind and solar power plants. Again, please mute your microphones. Thank you. Apologies, I don't know who's talking, but please mute your microphone. Okay, so far no one believes that it's a local task force responsible for managing wind and solar power plants, but we have 60-40 between a local group with member-controlled governance and a group of citizens who generate energy by cycling. So I will stop these questions here, and indeed, 71% of you is correct. The energy community, as defined within the homegrown energy, is a local group with members control governance that produce, share, and manage their own energy. And now we want to hear from you. What do you think local authorities can do to support energy communities or energy productions at the local level? Yes, raise awareness is definitely something that municipalities and other actors can do, as well public funding and information. And of course, the political support to the energy community is very important. Roofs or places, I suppose this is mean like lending roofs or public rooftop, for instance, for PV panels, or investing in PV panels in public rooftop. This is indeed an action that we are suggesting municipalities to undertake. Similar to the previous one, so to lend plans for renewable energy sources. Provide financial incentives and technical assistance, and support in providing capacities to members. These are all very good suggestions. As part of the homegrown energy, we suggest a sort of 3-level engagement approach. One is indeed to raise awareness, to, for instance, open a one-stop shops for energy communities, or to support the activities of local one-stop shops for energy communities, and then to lend a hand. So as you guys suggested, to open up the rooftops for PV panels for the energy communities, or even to act as guarantee for the citizens for them to access financing. And then, of course, the municipalities are very much encouraged to be active part of the energy community, meaning by investing in the project and being either the funder or, in case, a member, a prosumer of the energy community. Moving to the last slide, what do you think are the benefits for having an energy community in your town? The main objective is indeed to reduce energy bills, fulfill your requirements. Yes, that's nice to have. Produce local and green energy, yes, and manage it. And these help to keep the energy value within the community, but also helps the community to protect the citizens from price shocks. And of course, for member states to increase the energy independence. Invest in local energy, yes, of course. It's to have green energy in your town. Sovereignty, yes. Okay, we have a lot of answers. And indeed, these are the main benefits of having a community. Also, to engage the citizens in an energy project and build their trust towards the city's visions. This was it for the poll. Now, allow me to go very quickly on a couple of slides about the homegrown energy. So in addition to what we said, we also support municipalities towards 3 stacks together with partnerships with other EU initiatives. So if a municipality is still exploring the concept of energy communities, you don't know yet how to move, you don't know yet how to engage the citizens, you can host a citizen energy panel and be supported by technical experts in moderating it, thanks to the support provided by the Citizen Energy Advisory Hub. If you already know what you want to do with your energy community, but you don't know how to proceed, like what legal requirements there are, what administrative procedures you have to follow, you can apply for the technical assistance of the Citizen Energy Advisory Hub. And the second call will be open on the 1st of September. And of course, we will promote it through our channels. And then instead, if you already know what to do, but you're simply missing the resources to develop the business plan for the energy community, if you are a group of citizens or part of a group of citizens or an associations, you can apply for the European Energy Community Facility. From a second, the call is still open, otherwise there will be another call launched soon. Otherwise, in autumn, the European City Facility will launch its new call, and among the possible projects, cities can apply to develop an investment concept, so similar to a business plan for setting up energy communities. Apologies, it seems that my screen was blocked. We have developed a map. We are collecting success stories from municipalities across Europe that have established energy communities or that have supported energy communities. So you can be inspired by reading what other cities are doing. And of course, if you do have a story about an energy community in your town, feel free to share it with us. Now, I thank you, and I pass the floor to Christiane Hager from the Upper Austrian Energy Agency. Thank you.
So good morning. Thanks for the invitation and the introduction. I hope it's not too hot yet, because many countries, I guess, in Europe are in the middle of a heat wave, so we'll try to bring you some energy this morning. I will share some basic information on energy communities with a focus on electricity sharing, and I will explain why this is a very useful topic to look at. So I will do some general introduction, and then Francisco Puente will follow up with thoughts on the business model, so the economic logic that energy communities should think and can have. I start briefly by introducing ManagEnergy. As many of you may know, this is a European Commission initiative that supports regional and local energy agencies in leading the energy transition. And there are over 300 of us in Europe with more than 4,000 staff. We are quite different, obviously, in how we work, what we do. However, we are all working hard for the energy transition. And in ManagEnergy, we provide information, know-how, visibility, and networking opportunities to local and regional energy agencies and cities and regions. Our goal is, of course, as always, boosting the investments in energy efficiency and renewables in European cities and regions. Quickly, before I go into the subject, let me introduce our own agency. We are based in Linz. You can see it on the map where it is. We have made quite a lot of progress in the energy transition. Over 90% of our electricity and over 70% of our space heating are from renewables, and we managed to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in buildings by over 60% in the last 20 years, and we have over 800 energy communities. My organization is the Regional Energy Agency, and among many other activities, we also run a one-stop shop for energy communities. We also run a one-stop shop on building renovation, where we are supporting 10,000 households every year. Now, what do I mean when I talk about electricity sharing? The Renewable Energy Directive number 2 enabled a new form of energy sharing in so-called renewable energy communities. They are allowed to share renewable electricity among their members within geographic proximity, locally, and the key element is they do not need the involvement of an electricity retailer. Obviously, this has a great potential that immediately comes to your mind for the energy transition, the involvement of citizens and cities. However, there are two main barriers. One is that not all member states, or not that many member states, have fully implemented this instrument. And that, of course, when you're there, a lot of support is needed, among others from initiatives such as the Covenant of Mayors or ManagEnergy, and then hopefully also from cities across Europe. However, even if your country has not implemented this possibility to really share electricity without an electricity retailer, this is very likely to come in the not so distant future, because the Commission is insisting a lot that finally all member states transpose this article of the Renewable Energy Directive. And in addition, there's a second article on energy sharing that also enforces that. Now, what is important to know when you think about this electricity sharing? You have to think a little bit, how does the electricity market work? So in the long ago past, we had in one hand the so-called utilities, generation, transmission, distribution, and retail, and there were the consumers who bought from this energy utility. Then, about 20 years ago, there was the liberalization of the markets, where there was a split. Generation of energy is liberalized, so anyone can do it, provided, of course, they meet legal and technical requirement. And the same goes for electricity retailers. It's not limited to a certain type of company. In between, we have the grid, the transmission and the distribution grid. These are monopolies because it doesn't make sense to have more than one grid in the same place because these investments are very, very expensive. Now, the paradigm change that this concept of electricity sharing brought was that suddenly within one legal entity, you have generation, consumption within one organization. So that is actually even more than we had before in the last century. However, of course, we still need the grid. So we need the distribution and the distribution system operators, the so-called DSOs. So this is the fundamental principle that is needed to understand before you can really go into electricity sharing. As I mentioned, in my region, this concept is already able to unfold its power because we have the regulatory framework already in place for a couple of years. But I'm totally sure that the strength of these instruments, if the bureaucratic barriers are not unsurmountable, it all will catch on in every country where this is possible. We have the classic now renewable energy community. We also have joint PV installations in one building. Many countries have this already, and we have the citizens energy community together in our region with 1.4 million people. These have over 36,000 members. So it shows also the strengths of these instruments. We have two types. The more important type is that volunteers develop and operate the energy communities. And then we have energy communities developed by commercial actors that have specific interests, but they also need the support of the volunteers. Why? Because all the work around energy communities is non-for-profit, basically. So companies may have a different economic interest, keeping their customers, selling equipment, but it's quite a lot of work. So it's if you don't have another economic interest, it's not relevant. What are the cities in this group? The cities were critically important in the early phase because the cities helped many of these energy communities being born, especially by connecting their own buildings, joining the energy community and becoming members with their buildings, their consumption, and with their production if they already have PV installations or some have small hydro even. So they are critically important, but we found in our context that they will in the end not be the one in most cases that will actually be the initiators and then also the ones that manage the energy community. These are private associations. If you wonder who are these volunteers, well, typically these are people active in their communities. Maybe they ran the tennis club before, or the scout group, or the church group, or whatever, the fire brigades, the voluntary ones. So I think many of you know these kind of people. The point is there's real electricity sharing in the energy communities with an internal tariff. So the renewable energy communities buys the electricity from members that have PV, for example, and sells them to all members. And this creates investment potentials not only in the energy communities, but also, even more importantly, among the members, because they know they will have a good way to use the excess electricity. Each member keeps their individual electricity supplier because the energy community cannot cover year-round the demand, at least in our context. And for the rest, they need still a supply. In our case, in winter, when small hydro plants are low, If you have a very complex energy community, this is wind, small hydro, and PV, this can go in some cases up to 80% that they are able to supply to their members. Just a few examples. One is indeed an energy community that I just mentioned. They have over 1,000 members by now. They have one wind plant. They have over 600 PV, and they have 11 small and very small hydropower stations. So this is also, it turned out, in those countries where this is relevant, that these micro hydropower stations that actually was not very interesting for anyone, suddenly had a place to put their renewable electricity. The initial motivation of the initiatives was to raise acceptance for the extension of their existing wind park. Another example is in the city of Enns, the oldest city of Austria. They have now nearly 700 members, household service providers, especially doctors, shops, and a manufacturing company. You see, in 2025, they traded about 600,000 kilowatt hours. Their internal tariff, both for buying and selling, is 9.3%. For the electricity, of course, the taxes and the levies come on top of this. And they wanted to bring people together at a time when our society gets more and more divided. Last one is a small one, 20 members. Initially, a local farmer wanted to improve the self-consumption of his PV systems, and initially started with his immediate neighbors, and then this enlarged. Our organization also managed a one-stop shop where we provided regulatory, technical, financial, organizational assistance, and we do a lot of advice, but also now we support the existing energy communities in increasing, in growing, and in also adapting to the changing market conditions, because they do change quite often. Now I want to go a little bit further into this principle of electricity sharing, just to give you a more clear idea what I'm talking about. So here you have an energy communities on a warm, hot June day. It was last year actually, and you see here the aggregated consumption of all the members in 24 hours. And you see in the night it's lower, lunchtime it goes up, because it seems to have some members with consumption during lunchtime. In many countries this would look differently, so the peak would be in the late afternoon, early evening, but this is here also in Austria, many people have their main deal at lunch, so that also explains the lunch peak. Now here we have the PV production, quite the normal curve, many of you are familiar with. Now if we take this curve, obviously for the energy community it's important to detract, to subcontract the PV self-consumption of each of the PV owners. So if I'm a member with my PV plant in an energy community, of course, first I cover my own electricity consumption before I feed in the excess into the energy community. So that somewhat decreases, as you can see, the PV production available to the self-consumption. Then again, I contrast just for you you remember, this is the overall electricity consumption and the PV production. And now we see what happens. We see that if we look at the electricity actually traded in the energy community, you look at the dark red column. So this is the electricity that is actually shared between the members, so people with PV selling to other members without PV or with not sufficient PV. And you can see, in addition to that, you have those members with PV that self-consume during the day. So this is the curve that I showed earlier. And then during the night and in the early morning and in the early and late evening, you have the blue dominates, which is the electricity that is supplied from the individual electricity retailers. So That's how it functions in principle. Obviously, what you can see, especially in the summer days, that we still have quite a lot of excess renewable electricity in our energy community. So we need to work hard, and we have a couple of projects in that field to increase the flexibility behind the meters among the members, within the energy community, and maybe also towards the grid, when the grid offers interesting possibilities. However, in order to do this, you need to optimize home storage that many members have, consumption grid. So this is quite a challenging task that, as many of you may know, is also a topic in the current call that the LIFE program issued. Now, I want to close by sharing with you one result from a survey, also in response to the Slido poll we had at the beginning of the session. And so it was a large survey I carried out last autumn in cooperation with 14 of our larger energy communities, and we had the response from over 1,000 participants. So we can see that the energy communities are able to mobilize their members. It focused on the use of the storage, but we also asked, why are you a member in the energy community? And we can see that the price obviously plays a role, but actually the most important motive, or at least equally important, was independence through local action. So people felt, and people do feel, the pressure of the geopolitical situation and everything. So through the energy community, they realize they can capture a little bit of independence from everything that goes on in the world or in the businesses through working together locally. Obviously, the lower price for electricity and the feed-in price for the PV is also interesting, as well as its climate protection. But I encourage you all, when you work on energy communities and in the energy transition in general, please stress a lot the subject of energy independence, because it interests people quite a lot. And I would like to close by a quote that I like quite a lot. So each energy community is not very large and not very impactful, but together these little streams can make great rivers. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you a lot, Christiane. And if you have questions for Christiane, please drop them in the chat, and then we will answer them during the Q&A sessions. Manuel, I give the floor to Francisco Puente from ESCAM.
Hello, good morning. Can you see my screen? Is it okay?
Yes.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you. Well, following the presentation from Christiane, which is always very much appreciated and very interesting, learning every day from Austria, from Upper Austria, I would like to introduce now something that we have been developing in another project, in Power Econ project, which is the business models for energy communities. In this project, what we have done is to study the different possibilities to design and to prepare, let's say, the energy communities in the different European countries, considering different markets and different regulations. And with this, we have been publishing. We have published, in fact, 30 different business models in 6 European countries, which now they can be replicated or used by other ones interested in starting or in improving their energy communities. So for today, well, first of all, a very short introduction to our company. So I am the general manager of SCAN. SCAN is a consulting company which this year has its 40th birthday. So we were founded in 1986. We have been working these 40 years in sustainable energy. So basically energy communities and renewables, manufacturing industry, smart grids and digitalization, public and tertiary sectors, and also in models and financing. So very shortly about business model. So business model is a tool, and that is, I think, something we should understand, that it's a tool that helps. Well, in this case, based on the Canvas methodology, that's the methodology we have been using. You can find it easily in internet, the Canvas methodology, which basically presents the key information and the level of viability, or initial level of viability, both of a new organization or a new business line, or in this case, a new energy community, or a new line for an energy community. So in this project, we got this Canvas methodology and we adapted it for energy communities. So you can, with this, somehow design a viable energy community. So in a short, let's say, document, sometimes it's even 1 or 2 pages, we, in this, let's say, methodology, business model methodology, what kind of information we or you, if you are preparing an energy community, should include or should consider at least. Well, first of all, in every business model is a must to have something, a value proposition, so-called value proposition, from services or products that somehow are going to give you some kind of incomes or some kind of benefits. If you prepare a company or an energy community or a business line for energy community, a new line for energy community that doesn't have any income or wouldn't provide any economic benefit, from the economic and financing point of view, that wouldn't be sustainable. At some point, it would finish. So first of all, we need to provide a value that gives some kind of economic benefit. And this value can be, for example, we will see later on, a photovoltaic or a wind or storage or EV system project. Okay, but not only having a good idea on how to make money is that's it. I mean that's all. There are many good ideas, and then not all of them are economically viable or they have a good business model. So once we have this service or this value proposition, then we need to have these people that Christine has mentioned, that are women and men, that they are supporting the setting up of the energy community. So we need some stakeholders, which can be these pioneers or these political supporters or people that are leaders in the communities that are going to support and detect projects or help to engage other people. So we need this stakeholders engagement at the very early stage. So now we have one interesting value proposition, one interesting project, let's say something that is going to give some economic benefit, and then we have the people that will push these projects. Okay, then another point, third point, is the governance and constitution. So not all energy communities have the same shape in the governance. That means that, for example, in some energy communities, the municipality is part of the energy community, and in some others, the municipality, for example, gives up some roofs where the people can install, the members of the energy community can install some PV system, for example. Sometimes energy communities can be organized only by people, let's say by person, and sometimes there are shops or SMEs, or there is a mix of all of them in the energy community. So the governance and the constitution is also an important point to address. Also the legal form, because the legal form can be an association, can be a cooperative, can be a social company, other legal forms. That's also something relevant, and will depend quite a lot, in fact, of the kind of members and the aim of that energy community. Then also we need key partners. So we need stakeholders, but also key partners. And who can be these key partners? For example, in Spain, we have one energy community that let's say the project design, the photovoltaic and batteries project design and the management of the energy community is made by one cooperative, for example, or one association. And these are key partners. Sometimes they are not members, I mean, they are not necessarily members of the energy community, but they are key partners that we need to find out to develop our energy community and our projects. Can be also, for example, financing organizations. Sometimes we can put the money in front, I mean, put the money at the start of the project. Sometimes not everyone can put this money at the start, and we find for example, financing for 50% of the investments needed. So these financing partners are also relevant. Regulators, installers, these are key partners. Okay, then of course, if we are speaking about energy communities. For example, if we focus on renewable energy communities, we will be producing renewable electricity, producing and sharing. Then we need to know the estimation at least of what is the potential of that energy community and the projects that they are going to develop. Most energy communities start with one project. So sometimes there is a kind of mistake of mixing what is the energy community and what is the project of the energy community. So the energy community is an association, a cooperative, is a legal form. And the project as such is, for example, a photovoltaic, a photovoltaic wind and battery project. And that is something different. It's a project. So we have energy communities and then projects of the energy communities. So for this project or projects, we need to estimate, of course, what is the, in this case, for a renewable energy community, what is the production. So for example, Christiane mentioned that they have shared, not the production, but okay, they have shared 600,000 kilowatt hour per year. So then we know the amount of energy that the energy community is managing. We need this information, what they're going to produce, what they're going to share. We need this information. Of course, we know that the energy community's aim is not just to provide economic benefits, which is one of the aims, to provide economic benefits, not financing benefits for third parties, that is clear, but economic, but also environmental benefits. So, for example, if we install renewable systems and we share this electricity, of course, we have environmental impact. We reduce CO2 emissions because we are installing renewable energy. And also sometimes we don't consider it, but it's also an energy saving that locally produced energy also saves in the distribution grid, because we don't have to bring electricity from maybe hundreds of kilometers away. If we produce electricity in our own municipality, we save all the losses of the grid from bringing the electricity from a larger plant that is far away. Also, for example, in larger substations and transformers, there are losses of electricity. There are reduced. Let's say we spend energy on that, on transforming the energy from in a substation, for example. So we reduce all these losses of the grid, and that is also energy saving from installing locally produced renewable. What else? Of course, we need to speak about the economic part, and then we need to speak about what is the initial investment costs, then the operational, the yearly cost, so the operational cost. When we install a solar PV, we have an investment cost, but also every year we need some small maintenance, or after some years, maybe a larger maintenance because we need to substitute some inverters. So we need to consider not only the cost of the installation in the year zero, but also the operational and maintenance costs. And on the other side, we need to estimate the revenue streams. And what are the revenue streams for the project? Well, we need to, depending on the project, but basically, if we are producing with renewables, then the price we get for that renewable energy. So we get some revenues. If we produce a number of kilowatt hours, then we multiply by the price of 1 kilowatt hour and we get some, let's say, revenues. We call them revenues, but in fact, that would be the reduction of the cost for the people, for the associated members of the communities, the reduced costs for the energy, because they are going to use electricity from their own installation, and they're not going to buy from the grid. So wherever they don't buy, that is the revenues for us. Something that's very relevant are the legal and regulatory issues. That's something critical because in each European country this is different. We have different different regulation and different laws. So depending on the laws and the regulation, there are, for example, there is possibility to share or not the electricity to a certain distance, for example, or to a certain, for example, to a certain number of users that are in the same grid, in the same low voltage grid, or sometimes regulation, the legal situation allows to get some incentives or not, or taxes. So legal and regulatory issues are critical because sometimes the viability depends on this. And each EU country, I think we are all among ourselves different in the legal and regulatory issues, as well as in the market issues. So, for example, the price of the electricity. When we speak about revenues, of course, it's not the same producing in a country where the kilowatt hour is 20 cents of euro per kilowatt hour than in another country where the cost is 10. It's different. Another important issue, and this is more and more relevant, is the social impact. Social impact can be, for example, that we include some vulnerable people or people with low incomes in the projects of the energy community, or somehow we can prepare an amount of energy for this group of people. So sometimes, not always, but sometimes there is a strong social impact in the energy communities because we can involve and we can give for a reduced price electricity to vulnerable families or people with low incomes. And finally, when we prepare all this business model, and I think this is also for any project we prepare, we need a roadmap. A roadmap means we need to put tasks and dates. Sometimes we prepare a lot of information, a lot of documents, but there is no schedule for that. So we need, once we have different, we have prepared, let's say, our business model, or we're preparing our business model, then we need to estimate what kind of task we will need to develop and when. Many times they are linked because we need to finalize or start one task to continue with the next one. So we need to be very accurate in preparing all the tasks that we need to follow and when they should be executed. And also the dependence between the tasks. So if one task is delayed or is in advance, then we can move another task maybe in advance. For example, permitting for installations is a critical issue, or administrative processes are sometimes critical. And the study of the grid to be able to connect an installation that's critical. So there are several issues that are critical. When do we need the financing, for example? So we need to, all the previous tasks that we have been mentioning, we need to really put them and all the additional tasks in a line and in a graphic. Maybe it can be a Gantt chart or can be a table with milestones. Something simple that everyone can understand and know where is the roadmap and how is it done. And to finalize, I would like to just mention what energy community in Spain, in Getafe, one city close to Madrid. And this was established in December 2024 as an association. Now they have over 30 members. And this, in this case, the governance includes somehow the one that manages the energy community is the housing company, the municipal housing company of Getafe, because they have some knowledge on energy communities. At the moment, they are in the process of installing 2 installations with overall 200 kilowatt peak. Investment cost for that is approximately 200,000 euros. It will depend to the amount of storage that they will install. The revenues will be more or less 45,000 euros per year. Well, regulation has been updated in 2026 in Spain, so we can install up to 5 megawatts size, so 5,000 kilowatt size of renewable plant, and a consumer associated to that plant, to that project, can be up to 5 kilometers distance from this plant if it's a PV plant. So we have now, let's say, good potential to establish these projects of the energy community. Social impact is that we are thinking about possibly 30%, something like 30% of the PV production allocated to residents in vulnerable situation. We have some part of the neighborhoods are specifically people with a vulnerable situation. Of course, all the electricity will be locally produced, and we will reduce approximately 72 tons of CO2 per year due to this installation. And with this, I think, with this, my presentation is finished. Here you have my contact details as well, so please contact for any comment or for any question. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Francisco. Now we open for Q&A sessions. Feel free to raise your hand if you want to ask the questions, or of course you can drop them in the chat. Meanwhile, Cristiane, we have already questions for you. So what do you do with the excess of energy productions that can be stored? Is it sold to the retailers?
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Marion, for this very important question. So the electricity that is not that the energy community is not able to use among its members is economically, because this is an economic process and not a physical process, as I'm sure you are aware, remains the ownership, if I want to say so, of the respective producer. So if I, during a certain 15 minutes, produce 2 kilowatt hours, and the energy community only is able to absorb 1 kilowatt hour, the remaining kilowatt hour, I will typically sell to, in our case, we have a special organization for this in Austria that will buy the excess electricities from PV, however, at a very low price. Also, I could, if I want, make an agreement with an electricity retailer. That's also what quite a lot of people do, for my excess electricity. However, it's clear that during summer peak, during sunny times, the market value of electricity from PV is not very high because we have now quite a lot of PV. So in that sense, the economic benefit definitely is the highest when you put it into an energy community. If you have a very large plant, several megawatt, the economic model could possibly look different if you have a power purchase agreement or some other, or if you have an old plant that still got a feed-in tariff from the system, then the economic model again would look differently, but typically is they sell it to a dedicated organization with a very low price. Francisco, I think you add something.
Yes, also the example from Spain, I mean, is quite similar to Austria. I think we have a little difference is in our regulation. That's one of the things we mentioned in the business model, no? The regulation. We have regulation. If you have a plant which is under 100 kilowatts, then your usual retailer, so the same retailer that the person has, the person or the company has to buy the surplus of electricity, and then they agree with the consumer the price. So if I have a surplus, so I am assigned an amount of electricity and I have a surplus of electricity, this is the consumer on the consumer side. For example, I am assigned 1,000 kilowatt hour per year and I consume 700, then the 300 is a surplus, is considered as a surplus, goes to the grid, and if is the installation, the common installation is below 100 kilowatts, my retailer, so in the same bill, I have a reduction, a minus. So we agree on a price and I get a minus in the bill. What is the problem? Let's say that this price is very low. So similar, the price for electricity is, for example, 1/3 or 1/4 of the market price. So it's not very good to have a big surplus. If the plant is over 100 kilowatts, then we need yes or yes a retailer. So the energy committee has to contact a retailer and they have to manage the electricity in the conventional system. So they buy us the electricity and they pay us a certain amount for that, as if we were a producer with a PV system.
So you can already see how important the regulatory framework is, because this part was quite different between Spain and Austria. So it really depends how your country regulates this. But I would say these are the two most important options that I have come across. So in either systems, it's obviously the very best to optimize your self-consumption in your own building first and in the energy community second. And so this is really the big task that is mostly ahead of us, I would say, so that people will profit most from the investments they have made in the PV. And I think there is a question now to Francisco on the most challenging business model. a part of the business model?
Well, the most challenging part of the business model. Whoa, that's a good question. That's a very good question. I think, at least from my experience, I think there are two parts which are very, very critical. The first one is when you, so the starting part. So when you find these pioneers and these people that are going to push for the energy community, and you need to really, they need really to be very enthusiastic. They work for free. They dedicate time. Usually, the concept of the energy community is sometimes not so well known in many areas. So there is like a kind of missionaries. They can be called missionaries for energy communities that really start to move this energy. This maybe at the start it's not called energy community because people sometimes don't know what is it. But let's say they start this movement to aggregate people and to inform that okay, you don't need to buy the electricity to the market. You don't need to just keep the same model. You can start a new model where you are the center. So you are the one that take the decision, and you are somehow a small company or a small group, but competing with the market, and you are going to produce, and you're going to be able to produce and sell your electricity in fair conditions. I wouldn't say always cheap, but I would say fair conditions, and you will know how this comes. Where does the electricity come from? What are the costs? Who you pay? So transparency also, fair and transparent information. I think people like that, to be independent, to be fair, to be transparent. This at the start. And of course, a second important part is to match the economic and legal part and regulation part. So when you start to develop your first project, let's say, then all the things happen. So then you have maybe you need a place to install the system. You need to find this place, and sometimes when after a few months this changes because some reason. Maybe there's a new regulation happening in the month 3 that you are preparing something and changes your model. Also, you need to clarify very well. I would say an important part is to clarify very well how will be financed. So how will you pay the bill? Sorry, how will you pay? There's a way to speak. How would you pay the investment? So, okay, now we have an investment is 100,000 euros or 50,000 euros. Okay, how are we going to pay? Because you cannot pay the installer usually in 2 years' time when that starts to produce, or in 6 months, or in 8 months. They want to have a 30% at the start of the project. Okay, where is that money? So, important thing is the first part, I would say, in the model, and then the somehow the integration of all the regulation, economic and market conditions, and prepare one project that is realistic and is viable. And maybe a third point important is once you have the first and the second more or less completed, prepare everything in the model, is also how to explain this to the people. So there is a lot of work behind, but you cannot present all this work to the, let's say, to the common neighbors, to my neighbors. If I go to my neighbor and explain all the process to create the community, all the process to connect the economic part, etc., they will get crazy. So we prepare one page, and everything is prepared in one page. This is the energy community. We will be an association. We will install 50 kilowatts in the roof of the municipality, and then you will get so many. You can get so many kilowatt hours per year, and you will have to invest 1,000 euros, something like this. And then you can keep on explaining, but prepare very clear and simple information for the average, let's say, neighbor or average company, because otherwise maybe they reject to participate because they don't understand very well, or they feel it's too complex.
Maybe I add to this question from our perspective. So the good thing is when you do real electricity sharing, and it will also come in your country, you don't have to rely only on the investments of the energy community itself, but also members can invest. And then quite some of these complications go away in the sense that a member looks at this and decides to do it or not. The biggest challenge we see with our electricity sharing model is that, of course, most interested are people that have a PV plant, because also they are used to deal with energy questions. If you live in an apartment, it's not very present in your real life. So the energy communities, however, need also people without PV plants because otherwise no one will take up the excess, the surplus production. So the great thing about this model, it has built in the model that people will look actively for people who live in apartments, who often have a lower income than the people who live in the one-family home with a PV plant. So it's actually a systematic part of these real electricity sharing. So this is a challenge that our energy communities have. Then, of course, visibility and explaining the concept, especially to people who, have not so much interest and experience. They know energy just from paying the bill and nothing else. And then, of course, then with growing size of energy communities to do all the administrative work. And then I think there's another question.
Yeah, just to remind you all that there is also support at European level to build the business plans and to kick off the energy communities. Not only ManagEnergy here, they do amazing masterclasses on the topic, which is very deep learning on how to set up an energy community. But also, as I mentioned earlier, the Citizen-led Energy Advisory Hub provide assistance and put at disposal experts for the organizations of citizen energy panels. So the very step to involve citizens and explain what an energy community is and what are the benefits, but also they will deliver technical assistance towards cities to go through all legal procedures and measures that you need to set up an energy communities. And again, there are the European Energy Community Facility and European City Facility that will finance the development of business plan investment concept. They are called differently into the facilities to set up energy communities. We have one last question from Anna. So regarding the initial and profit investments, do you see it more often coming mainly from members, or do you think it's possible to get funding from source, some like foundations and similar?
May I answer, Christiane, to this one?
Sure,
okay.
I
think the experiences are vary a lot. I mean, if you're going to install something, you need to put some investment varies a lot. In principle, it's quite difficult to get 100% financing. I mean, sometimes you have some subsidy or you get some fund from the public funding from the government, and then you need to get the remaining part. But if so, first thing is maybe is very difficult to finance 100%. That's one thing. I would say it's almost impossible, at least in Spain. Nobody gives you 100%. Second, typically conventional banks don't know too much about energy communities, and particularly they are new. So it will be difficult, or they will put a high rate for your money because you don't have assets, you are new, they have a lot of risk in principle. So typically, at least in several countries that I know, they go to these foundations, as you mentioned, that they finance, or some ethical banks. So you need to find which kind of financing organizations really support sustainable energy projects somehow, or social projects. I would go in this direction and then find out which are the ones that provide this financing. If it's an installation new for a group of people, and you have private, let's say, people in this, it's good that at least they put some money up front. Why? Because this is a part of the commitment from them. So if, okay, you want to participate in the energy community, you want to install something, okay, then to assure this commitment, let's prepare some good agreement for you and what you will get, what you will receive, how much energy you will receive, some estimation. And then for this, you need to pay, for example, you need to put, for example, 20, 25%, 30% of the investment cost proportional to your energy, for example. So it's good that there is a kind of initial, let's say, commitment in this initial payment from the people to somehow get the real ones that really want to push the energy community and participate in it. It probably gives you less headaches afterwards. I would say this is the question from my side, at least.
Christiane, would you like to add something?
I just added, no, that's totally fine. And maybe one sentence, there are also a lot of middle class people that often are quite happy to put a couple of thousand maybe towards such a project. I think this should not be forgotten, that in any country of Europe, that we will have people who can make small investments without too many problems into something they like. So this becomes from making a technical investment that is boring into investing in my community where I live. So, and also I answered the questions from Tom on how many people do you need in the in the team.
Thanks a lot, Christiane and Francisco, and thanks you all for joining. It's already 11, so we close this webinar today, and I wish you a very happy summer. Have a nice day.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lise, for your remark. I saw it. Thanks. Bye.